All right, yeah, welcome to the third open house. I'll just go through the presentation like Eric said here, go through kind of the scope of improvements, assessments, and construction process. So the project area for the 2023 street and utility improvements is 12th Avenue North from Main Street to 1st, 2nd Street North from 14th to 15th, 14th and 15th Avenue North from Main Street to 2nd, and 16th Avenue North from Main Street to 1st and 2nd to 3rd. So there's several improvements we're going to look at, including the street is the main driver, but also the utilities underneath the street, placement and improvements. So the first one of these utilities is sanitary sewer. We're proposing to replace all of the old clay pipe with new plastic PVC pipe, and also the old manholes with new concrete manholes. We're also going to be replacing the old cast iron water main with new ductile iron water main, and also upsizing the water main from 6 inches to 8 inches in diameter to increase capacity of fire flows, and also replace all the fire hydrants. Along with the sanitary sewer main and water main replacement, we will also replace the sanitary and water service lines to each property from the main in the street to the right-of-way line or the property line, which is typically about a foot or two behind the public sidewalk. The full service is owned by the property owner from the main in the street to the house, but we will be replacing the portion from the main to the property line as part of the project. From the property line or right-of-way to the house, which we're calling the private area, that can be replaced per each property owner if they coordinate with a private plumber. And we could help coordinate timing of that if you were interested in doing that kind of during the project. There will also be some drainage improvements. There's some drainage issues in the neighborhood today. A few of these are at 12th Avenue. The pipe is currently undersized, so we're going to be upsizing the pipe, better flow. And then at 14th Avenue and 2nd Street North, at that intersection, we're going to be adding several catch basin inlets to reduce the drainage issues at that intersection. And then the same thing at 16th Avenue North and Main Street, adding a couple catch basin inlets there. On 16th Avenue North between 2nd Street and 3rd Street, the grades today are actually very flat, with not much for the water to go. So we're actually going to be lowering the street slightly and adding catch basin inlets about mid-block, so we actually have somewhere for the water to drain. While we're replacing the utilities and the streets, we'll also be replacing all of the existing public sidewalks throughout the project area, and also extending some sidewalks. One of these being along the east side of 14th Avenue North along Metzel Field. We'll be extending the sidewalk from 2nd Street North to 1st Street. And then we'll also be filling in 2 gaps of sidewalk on 1st Street North between 14th Avenue and 16th Avenue. So as many of you are probably aware, the pavement is in rough condition, a lot of cracking, a lot of potholes, a lot of patching over the years. So now it's time to reconstruct the road. And you can see a picture in the upper left of the existing pavement conditions, and a picture in the lower left is an example of what a newly reconstructed road will look like. This is actually 8th Avenue, just north of Main Street from about 10 years ago. So we'll be replacing the pavement, obviously, and then also adding in new aggregate base, new gravel, new sand section below the pavement, and then replacing all the concrete curb and gutter as well. The existing and proposed street widths are going to remain similar on most streets. There are a couple exceptions to this. First being 14th Avenue North from 1st Street to 2nd Street. Right along Metzel Field, where we're putting in that sidewalk. In order to put in the new 6-foot sidewalk, we need to reduce the width of the road about 1.5 feet. So not much, but just enough so the new sidewalk can get by some obstacles. You can see the pictures in the lower right. There's some obstacles, including the ballpark lights that we need to narrow in the road just slightly to get that sidewalk in. We realize there's a lot of parking in that area when there's events at Metzel Field, but They'll still be 34 feet wide, which is adequate enough for parking on both sides, or more than adequate. The other area that we're narrowing the street a little bit is 15th Avenue from Main Street to 2nd. It's currently overly wide for regular residential streets. The average residential street in Hopkins is 30 to 32 feet wide. So we're going to narrow it down to 32 feet wide, still on the upper end of that. Still plenty of room for parking on both sides of the street. There will be some boulevard trees that will be removed for one of 4 reasons, and some of you in this room probably received a letter recently about boulevard tree getting removed in front of your property and the steps of doing that. So one of the 4 reasons is it's an ash tree, and actually most of the ash trees have already been removed by the city forester. Will just remove the stump when the project happens. And then second reason would be the tree is in poor condition or poor health. Third would be it's in conflict with utilities. Most of the time it's the individual water or sewer service lines. And the last reason is conflict with road or sidewalk construction and grading. So any tree that's removed will be replaced with a tree as part of the project, towards the end of the project as well. While this project area probably won't affect most of you unless you frequently visit around City Hall here, just did want to note that there is another project area that's included with your project. It's just a mill and overlay, so pavement resurfacing of First Street South, 10th Avenue South, and 9th Avenue South around City Hall here. So this is going to be occurring this summer as well. And the pavement resurfacing will only take about a month or so. Project budget and assessments. So there's 117 properties that are on the assessment roll. Currently 108 of these properties are single family homes. And I'll get into this in a little bit, but 23 of those properties have been reduced. The assessment amounts have been reduced since the preliminary assessment roll due to previous assessments in the 2011 project. 9 of the 117 properties are commercial or multifamily properties. And then there's 15 properties that were on the preliminary assessment roll that are no longer on this assessment roll or show a $0 amount. And I'll explain that a little bit as well. So the total special assessment amount is just over $1 million. And the total estimated project cost is just over $7 million. Most of that is the reconstruction area, $6.5 million, versus the street resurfacing area of just $500,000. So some of the funding sources are the special assessments is one, and then the other 4 are general taxes and bonds, takes up the majority. Then the storm sewer, sanitary sewer, and water funds take up the rest. The special assessment policies. The streets will be assessed at 70% of the total street improvement costs. This will vary for each property based on the front footage of your lot. However, the front foot rate is subject to a cap, which I'll get into on the next slide. And then streets with no adjacent property addresses, so this only applies to 2nd Street North on this project, would be typically distributed 1 block north and south per the city policy. However, this doesn't apply if properties are already assessed on current or recent improvements. So for the properties to the south, you're already getting assessed at the cap, so you wouldn't get assessed for 2nd Street as well. And the properties to the north were fully assessed at the cap during the 2011 project. So those are the properties that actually went down to $0 that were previously shown as a assessed amount on the preliminary assessment roll. So there's actually no unit assessments for 2nd Street North on this project because of those reasons. There's no assessments for the utility mains on this project, so the water main, sanitary sewer main, or storm sewers. Utility services for each individual property is assessed. It's 50% of the actual as-bid costs for single-family residential properties and 100% of the as-bid costs for the commercial or multifamily buildings. So your total assessment would be the utility assessment plus your street assessment. So those special assessment caps I mentioned before, the front foot rate cap for those single family residential properties is $103.05 per front foot this year. This is increased annually 3%. And then the front footage cap, which I don't believe applies to any of the properties this year, but if there was a property over 125 feet, that property would get capped at 125 feet for the assessment calculation. Caps don't apply to commercial properties or multifamily buildings, but we did pull benefit appraisals for these properties since they can get quite high, the assessment calculations, and the lower amount is used. We compare the appraisal versus the policy amount. So again, total assessment amount may have three parts: the street assessment, front footage rates, which for all the single family residential is basically just at $103.05 per front foot. And then the multifamily and commercial property is a lesser of the actual street cost per front foot or the benefit appraisal. And then the water service assessment and sewer service assessment are each 50% of the actual cost that was bid for single family residential. So for water services, 50% of the just over $3,000 that was bid turns out to be $1,606.84 that the homeowner will pay. And the sewer service, the homeowner would pay $1,455.20, which is 50% of that bid cost. No sewer or water assessments for any lines replaced in the last 10 years. We have taken off a couple already for that reason. So if you know your sewer service has been replaced all the way to the main in the street in the last 10 years, let one of us know, and we can take that sewer or water service assessment off your list. So here's an example calculation, kind of your typical basic single family residential property. This one just happened to pick 29 12th Avenue. Kind of a standard 50-foot lot, which seems to be kind of the average, the most common lot in this neighborhood. 50 feet at that $103.05 per foot cap. Multiply those two, gives you $5,152.50 for the street assessment. This property is also getting a water service replacement and a sewer service replacement. So both of those, $1,600 and a little over $1,400. So add all three together, and this assessment is $8,214.54. And again, this is probably the most common assessment through the neighborhood that you'll see. Now this one is a little more complicated, so bear with me. This applies to that 16th Avenue block between 2nd Street and 3rd Street North. This is the ones I was telling you about, those 20 properties that had reduced assessment amount since the preliminary roll. This is also because they had a partial assessment during that 2011 project. So the calculation would start out the same as the previous example. This property happens to be only 47 feet wide, so it'd be 47 feet times the $103.05 cap, bringing the assessment to $4,843.35. However, in 2011, they paid an assessment for 3rd Street because we reconstructed 3rd Street during that year, just over $2,000. So if we would have done 3rd Street this year, they wouldn't have had to pay for it because they would have been at the cap for the work on 16th Avenue. So we thought it was fair to adjust that amount. So the assessment cap that they would have paid in 2011 at that 2011 rate was just over $3,000. So the percentage of cap that they paid was just about 70%. So the remaining percentage owed of that cap is 30% that they would owe on this assessment. So basically they're paying today's dollars on what they would have paid back in 2011, which turns out to be 30% times that calculator amount, which is just over $1,400 is their new street assessment calculation. Then they're also getting a water service replacement and a sewer service replacement. So add all three of those together and their total assessment amount is $4,524.76. I know that was probably a little confusing. So if anybody has questions on that, if that's one of your properties, feel free to talk to me afterwards. So summary of payment options, there's 4 options for payments. First is to prepay in full or part without any interest until the end of July of this year. The second would be to prepay in full or part from the end of July until November 15th of this year. Those payments will go directly to the city. Third option, which is the most popular option because you don't have to do anything, the remaining balance of your assessment will get put onto the county taxes after November 15th of this year, and will get paid annually over a 15-year period with an interest rate of 5.71%. This interest rate was just determined by the city after the sale of their bonds. So this would impact escrow payments if you have a mortgage, or you would just pay your county taxes. It would be including your county taxes statement if you don't have a mortgage. Fourth option, which is the least popular option because it just delays the assessment, doesn't make it go away, but this could be an option for some people that to defer the assessments to pay it at a later date. You have to qualify for this. One of the things you have to qualify for, it has to be a homestead property. You also have to have an income limit of less than $45,625. And you have to be one of the following, either 65 years or older, active military, or on full disability. So if you cover all those, check all those boxes, apply with the city, you could defer your assessment, but the interest is accrued during that deferment period. So it's just pushing it off and accruing that interest. So it's really only for kind of special scenario. So here's an example payment schedule. This is that typical $8,000 principal assessment that a lot of people will see at the 5.71% interest rate. So you can see you pay the same annual principal every year over a 15-year period if you chose to do it this way with the county taxes. And the annual interest would start off larger and then trickle down by the last year. So a person with an $8,000 assessment would pay just under $4,000 in interest over that 15-year period. Remaining project schedules, and tonight we're having our third and final neighborhood meeting. Next Tuesday night at the regular city council meeting, we'll conduct the public hearing on assessments and consider adopting the assessment roll, and then also award the contract to the low bidder. May to November would be construction. Construction could start in April if the weather allows, if all the snow melts outside sooner than we expect. But it would likely start probably that first week in May is my best guess at the moment. Final punch list and cleanup items would likely go into spring of 2024. But main construction items would wrap up end of October, early November. This is a preliminary construction phasing plan, or kind of the sequencing that we expect the contractor to do. We haven't received an official schedule from them yet. We expect to receive that in the next few weeks or a month, and then we'll mail out a newsletter with their expected schedule. But this is generally the phasing that they'll have to follow. So the first street that they'll likely start on is that southern block at 16th Avenue North between Main Street and First. Then if they choose to work on the other block at 16th Avenue North at the same time, they might do that. Otherwise, that block between 2nd Street and 3rd Street is kind of a flex phase, we're calling it. Letting the contractor choose if they want to do it earlier on in the construction season or later. But again, we'll let everyone know when we get that schedule. Then the second phase would be 14th Avenue North, the priority being the block next to Metzel Field between 1st and 2nd, and then 2nd Street along with it. And then the third phase would be 12th Avenue North between Main Street and 1st. This wouldn't start until after the Raspberry Festival, so later in July. And then the last phase would be 15th Avenue North, probably start late July or August. So construction process, there's several steps that you'll see in the construction process. There's about 4 weeks of pavement removal and utility installation. The utilities we covered before, including sanitary sewer, water main, sewer and water services, and then the storm sewer. And then after utilities are in, there's about 3 weeks of street reconstruction, including grading and excavation, installation of the new concrete curb and gutter, along with the any concrete driveways, and then the first layer of asphalt would be paved in the street. And then following that first layer of asphalt pavement, there'd be about 3 weeks of boulevard restoration, including the concrete sidewalks, any asphalt driveways that need to be paved, any irrigation and visible dog fences that need to be repaired. If we do damage any irrigation or dog fences throughout the project in the city right away, we'll repair those as part of the project. If you know where those are, feel free to let us know, so it would help the coordination process. But we will repair those throughout the project. And then restoration behind the curb, so replacement with new topsoil and turf, which will be sod. And then at the end of the project, there'll be about 2 to 4 weeks of final cleanup and paving. So once we get every phase restored, we'll likely do this all at once at the end of the project. Street signage, tree planting, new manhole castings, reinstalling light poles on 12th Avenue. And then the last thing that we'll do on all the streets would be the final layer of asphalt would be paved. This could get broken up into a couple phases. If, say, 16th Avenue was ready in July or August, we might do this final paving then, but most likely it'll all be done at once at the end. Some construction impacts and access. So private utilities, so the gas companies, communication companies, power, there will be relocations that will be occurring prior to and during construction. One of the main ones is I think every block except for 16th Avenue will be getting new gas main and services. So that'll be actually one of the first things you'll see happening. CenterPoint Energy will be drilling in a new gas main. And then Excel will be relocating some poles, and then the communication companies will just have some minor relocations as needed. So unplanned outages may occur during construction. These can be reported directly to the utility company, but feel free to report them to me or Josh as well. And we can talk with the contractor, make sure they're reporting it to the utility company as well. There'll be temporary water shutdowns. So to avoid longer duration shutdowns or multiple days of shutdowns, there will be a temporary water system that'll be laid out above ground and hooked up to everyone's houses while we do the water main replacement. But there will be some shutdowns, 4 to 6 hours here and there. When we make that switch over from the main to the temp main, or have to put in a valve in an intersection. So when there are those temporary shutdowns, we'll be notifying you at least 24 hours in advance of when that time window will be. There is no planned disruption to sewer service, other than maybe there's a few properties actually between 1st and 2nd Street on 16th Avenue where we're lining the sewer main. They'll get a door notice though when that sewer service won't be available, but again, it's more like hours, not days. So there will be some temporary access restrictions. 2 main ones is the deep utility excavations where we're digging the sanitary sewer water main 8 to 10 feet deep right in front of your driveway. Obviously, you won't be able to get into your driveway when a hole is there. But the contractor is required to backfill those excavations every night. So as long as the road is drivable, as long as we didn't get a ton of rain that day, you should be able to get into your driveway every night during that process. And it is a moving operation. So we'll be knocking on doors, making sure people are out of their driveways if they need to be. Then the other main access restriction is when we pour the new concrete curb and concrete driveway aprons. You'll need to be out of your driveway for about 7 days while the concrete cures or hardens. And again, we will notify you when those dates are, so you can plan ahead and park block over wherever you have to. Landscaping and retaining walls may get affected as well, and we'll actually be sending out letters later this week to any properties that may have some landscaping or retaining walls in the public right of way affected. Landscaping items like plants, we will not be replacing in the right of way if we have to get into it, but we're giving you a heads up in case you want to relocate them beforehand, and we can set up in-person meetings before construction starts to go over exactly what would be affected. Any retaining walls that are going to be affected, we will salvage and reinstall throughout the project if we can. If we can't salvage the material, we'll replace it. If it's block or timber wall that can't be salvaged. And then also just notify us, me or Josh, if you have any special needs or events. We can't accommodate everything, but most of the time we can work around things or accommodate it somehow or come up with other solutions, especially if you give us enough notice. So we have a project website at hopkins-2023.com. where you can see the project schedule, a lot of documents like this presentation, the assessment role, and we'll also be updating throughout construction on a weekly basis. So you can sign up for email or text updates or both on the website. So the project communication that we'll have again on that website, we'll be updating it weekly and sending out email and text blasts on at least a weekly basis. If there's something bigger happening during the week, we'll send that out as well. Newsletters we'll send out on a monthly basis. Notices will be delivered door to door as needed, especially for those water shutdowns and access restrictions that really only affect specific properties, not the whole project. We will have a project helpline at 612-619-7772 that you can call, and our communications team, Madeline, online here with us, or one of our team members will answer your question or get you in touch with the person that can help you out. And then we have our construction manager, Josh Robbie, here. He will be on site most days. And if he's not on site, he can be reached by his cell phone or email here. And then we'll also have other inspectors there basically anytime the contractor's there, which you'll probably be seeing their contact info on door-to-door notices and newsletters as well. And then if all else fails, you can also call me, project manager, Nick Amtuccio, and then Eric Klingbeil is the main contact with the city for this project if you need to talk to city staff. So that's all I got for the presentation. Thank you. I'll open up to questions. I'm going to let anybody online ask any questions first. Do we have any questions, Madeline?
So far, no questions. So if anybody has any, feel free to use the chat, or you can even unmute yourself and ask it directly.
While we're waiting for those, we can open up to the audience. Sure. So the question was, are there no alley surfaces other than entrances that are impacted? And no, nothing planned. Just the alley entrance aprons off the streets that we're reconstructing. Yeah, good question. So the question was, what do we do about garbage service for those that get along the street? You will put your garbage cans out just like normal on the day that it comes by. We're going to try to do the garbage service probably earlier than anything. Try to get it there before construction starts at 7 a.m. But put out your bins just like you normally would. And if the garbage truck can't get to your driveway for that specific day, the contractor will be responsible to take your bins to the nearest intersection where it will be serviceable. And then they'll bring your bins back. We're basically just going to be replacing the shutoff valve for the water on your service line called the curb stop. That's where we're going to be replacing up to, essentially. Sure. Yep. Yeah, so a lot of the curb stops that are shutoff valves for services are in the boulevard or like right behind the curb. We're going to try to move those back closer to the property line. So yes, we won't go that far if we would have to get into a massive wall or fence or something. We'll probably put it sometimes in the sidewalk and put a cover over the sidewalk. Sure. So there's no like clean out or anything, if that's what you're getting. No. Yep. Well, I'll correct you there. You're actually owning the whole water service from the house to the main. So that water shut valve is not the cutoff. Yep. That's just where we're cutting off. We're replacing it part of this project, but you own that shut off valve and all the way to the main. And it's the same with the sewer service, but we're just same with the water. We're going to replace about where the curb stop is for that shut off valve. Sure. Yeah. No, we've had conversations about it. So the question was, what do we do to protect animals before we do any tree clearing? So I mean, these tree Clears, the subcontractors and prime contractor, they're certified. They would, I would hope they would notify us if they saw something that they shouldn't be taking down at that time. And we are trying to get that out there. Tree clearing is going to be one of the first things that happens. So hopefully it happens a lot, most of it before any bird activity is happening. So, yeah, the trees will be taken down in pieces. So looks like we might have one question online. See something
We
in the chat?
do. Yep. So someone asked if we want to pay before July 31st, stop into City Hall and write a check against our property. Where will the bill be delivered prior to the July to November 5th period? So basically asking how to pay and yeah, where will the bill be delivered?
Yeah, so there won't be an actual bill or invoice that's sent to the property. The assessment letter everyone already received was the official notice, but Hopkins and Boulevard will work together to send out a post-assessment hearing notice and recap all the payment methods and all those dates and what the process is to submit payment. So basically, anytime after this March 21st date of the assessment hearing, assuming the assessment roll is adopted, this person can come into City Hall and make that payment.
Great, thank you.
So the letter said 2% above what the city's interest is. So yeah, the contractor, they have a 2-year warranty on their work from when they substantially complete the project. They're responsible 2 years out from that. If anything goes wrong, they have to come back and fix it. And also, I mean, yes, it is a low bid environment, but we were lucky enough to get a contractor, assuming they get awarded next week, that we've had in town for the last several years and have had good success with. Yeah, our old service pipes, an old lead pipe is hopefully not active. Yeah, we're gonna chase things, you know, outside of the products area, but yeah, if we run across it. Yeah, thanks, Madeline.
Yes, thanks all.